think we've covered the basic function of the transmission. The reason I spent so much time on that slider gear and clutch hub operation, because I think that's the big mystery inside the transmission. Now keep in mind that these transmissions, they're 40, 50 years old, some of them, you know, 30, they've got a lot of miles on them. We're going to actually look at the internal teeth and look at some wear patterns. Okay, going to take you off the stand for this, and like we were looking at in the other videos, this is your synchronizer ring. It acts like a brake, it slows it down. How do you know when it's wore out? Well, we're going to just look at the page right here, and we're gonna look at some notes here. You can read them yourself. I'm not gonna read them to you. And what happens if you, as the hub is pushing this in, and as this is acting as a brake to slow it down, what'll happen is it won't slow it down enough. It won't actually be gripping on this part of the hub, and the two sets of teeth will start to touch, and you'll get that crunching noise. It usually starts off, and you'll notice it when the car's cold, and it's like, oh yeah, that's not so bad. It just crunches once in a while when it's cold out, and then once it warms up, it starts going away. Well, stop. That's if you want to save that transmission, if you want to rebuild it, that's the time to start getting into it. If you continue driving it that way, you're going to trash it. And so what you're going to do is you're just going to slide it right here between this gap, and you're just going to, just like adjusting your valves, you're just going to feel it. You want to put pressure on the ring. I can't hold the camera very well and do that at the same time, and I don't want to use the stand just yet, but you get the idea. Now, here's another way when the gear is not in that stand, and it's probably better, and that's the way it shows in the book, is you can just slide it right in between here, and you can feel it. The book calls out between 75 and 40 is what they really would like to have. So the wear limit is 23,000. So this one would be good on this gear, but the other one over there on the stand this is too tight, and we haven't even started to look at this one that is actually the donor that we're really going to be using. Now, here is the problem with jumping out of gear. These are the slider hubs. These are 3 examples of first, second gear slider hubs. They're used, and let's just take a look at them. What jumps out at you when you look at these just sitting here side by side? I noticed that this one right here, the corners of these reverse teeth are pretty rounded and shiny. I don't know if I can get the camera angles. It looks like it's focusing pretty good. And then we'll look at these two over here. Look at this on these rounded edges here. That's from grinding on reverse, not finding it and grinding it. Okay, now as we look inside here, man, okay, see this one here with a black mark? There's 3 of those. That's where your detent's going to rest. We'll talk about that more later. But that is the section that your detent rests in. Now, in your center hub, you've got also have a big slot right there where my thumb is, right here. That's where the detent rests. You have to line those 2 places up to make room for the detent. Man, this is really hard to do. Okay, look down there in the slot and you'll see that notch. Okay, you got 3 tries. What you want to do is move your gear around. First try at one position and move it back and forth, up and down. Now this is dry, but you'll notice you get grabby ones. You'll get grabby, and you'll move it to the next spot, and it'll be real grabby and hard to move. It catches like, and then finally you'll find one spot. Oh, it's like the story of the 3 bears. You're gonna find that bed that feels just right, and you're gonna say, okay, that's the spot I want to keep it in. Mark it with a magic marker on the side, mark your hub on the center over here, so you keep it in that spot. What happens with age and wear, these things are tempered. They're no longer available. You can't get replacements for it. There is a company that has a tool that they've set up that they can regrind these ribs, just the edge of these ribs, and they can get your angle corrected from wear to use a new gear, and it will stay in gear properly and it won't be jumping out all the time. But it's I'm going to have to contact that outfit, and a lot of the last time I talked to them, which is about 10 years ago, I don't even know if they're still around. They don't really want to deal with the general public. These are kind of like wholesalers. All right, now you look at the ends of these ribs and you'll see the points on them. The points and how much wear is on them. Those two, now it's these inside pieces on both sides here. You've got the gear side that sits in over here. It's just sliding over the gear. Let's just set it up here. This is what's meshing over here. This is what's going up over. These teeth on the inside, you want a nice sharp point so that it can just catch that gear and stop that ring, line it up, and engage fully. Now there's pressure on this. These gear stacks, see, look at over here on this one. It ain't moving. It's not moving. And we were having trouble with shifting that one in the jig, so I'm suspicious that there might be some issues with that one as well. So those are some things that you want to look at. Just looking at these three here, these old used ones on the bench, you could pick out and you could say this one in the center is probably the best of the three from looking at it. And then you're going to, when you assemble it and you get it in the jig and you get it oiled up and you have the detents in place, you start moving it around, you're going to develop a feel. The only way you're going to develop that feel is by doing the work. You compare this transmission, the first one you do, you got nothing to compare it to. You put it back in the car, you drive it. Oh, that felt great. Man, this is perfect. I got lucky. Yoo-hoo! Okay, the next transmission that comes in, you do that one, and you think everything's good, and you put it in the car, and it don't work out so good. And you say, oh, yeah, I remember that when I was putting it in the fourth gear, it didn't feel right. So you're going to use pictures like this. This is really nice that it's got up there. You will, sooner or later, put a gear on backwards on the shaft. You're going to get so focused on what you're doing. But one of the things that I noticed is that when you look at your gear stack, all of the angles are the same direction. And I've done it myself. I put a gear on backwards, and then I have to press it off. Now see, on this new style transmission, you have a bending spring instead of a spacer. On the old style, with the keyed shaft, you have to use a solid spacer. This is a Berg unit that's made out of hardened steel. I've got a lot of the Berg stuff. I like that stuff. Okay. Then there's a spring that goes in there. Then your synchro hub goes in there on that. Okay, we're going to push it down. That's not where it sits, but it fixes the light a little bit better, so it's easy for me to look at those tips. Look at those tips. You can see the wear, because on a brand new gear, here's one that was never used. This isn't the same gear. This is, I think it is the third gear. See how the edges of these crowns, those dogs, see how they're sharp? They come to a nice V and they all look the same. Now you look down here on these and you can see how the ends are worn off and it's rounded. Here's a different one to look at here. This one looks actually like it's a little bit sharper. Let's compare another one over here. This one here. Okay, you're going to have wear on it. You're going to have wear on it. You just have to select the one that has the sharpest corners. And that's how you're going to decide which one you're going to use. You can take it apart. You can look for signs of wear like this, but unless you do this all the time, I don't know that the average guy's going to tell, because you could be borderline. It depends on how much horsepower you got. It depends on what you're doing with the car. Are you racing it? Are you using it for a daily driver? Have you got a stock engine? Have you got a high performance engine? What kind of clutch are you using? Using a high performance clutch with a heavy duty pressure plate? Are you using some funky clutch disc in there that is real grabby because you think you're racing and you're really not? But those are the kinds of things that you have to take into consideration. And you're only going to learn by experience. The other thing that you're going to find is the way the gear sits on the shaft. Now, I showed you in a previous video the difference in needle bearings. In the earlier ones, it was a narrower first gear, and you can just you'll just have to interchange them. Try not to mismatch your parts from one transmission. When I actually decided, made the commitment that I was going to learn how to build transmissions, I saw an ad in the newspaper. That ought to tell you how long it was ago. And it said Volkswagen transmissions for sale, core transmissions, something to that effect, core transmissions. And I thought, cores, what are they talking about, cores? So I called the guy up and he says, yeah, my son had a Volkswagen, and every time he broke the transmission he came to my house to replace it, and he left the old one at my house, and he says, I want to get rid of them, and come and get them. And I didn't know a thing about them, and I says, well, this is the kind that I have on my first sandrail. This looks like the same thing that's on there. How much, for these four? And he says, well, I'd rather sell the whole bunch. And I says, well, I know, but I live in a townhouse and I don't have any place to keep them. I'd really like these four. Would you take $100? And he says, well, I got another guy that's supposed to come look at them. And we started to walk away, and he says, $100, you got it with you? And I says, yeah, right here. And I whipped out the cash, and he says, all right, I'll help you load them up. And I took them home, didn't know what I had, didn't know the first thing about it. Had the books, started cleaning them, taking them apart, and all these years later, I just got buckets of this stuff laying all over the place. I've moved 4 or 5 times since then, and never say no when somebody wants to give you Volkswagen parts, but understand that you're going to have a place to store it. If you leave it outside, it's going to end up like this baby here that the first one we started on. It's going to get water in through that nose cone or someplace, and you're going to have trash. So hope you enjoyed this segment. I know it was long, and thanks for watching. Thanks for subbing. EZGZ out. Just can't seem to get my thoughts rolling. I'm not sure, but you might see something different.